Good afternoon. So yes, my name is Paul Armstrong. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for the Woodland Trust in Northern Ireland. So first of all, get this cleared up. I do not come from a forestry background or a conservation background. And coming from those four presentations is a bit intimidating because they're incredibly detailed. So all the questions, please, to the other speakers. I am fortunate enough to work with people who do specialise in conservation and in forestry. So my role within the Woodland Trust is to be responsible for our policy, our advocacy, and our evidence work in Northern Ireland. I use the evidence that we gather to develop policy, and I use that policy in my advocacy work with decision makers, be that in Stormont, Westminster, or in our local authorities. So the Woodland Trust, they're the UK's largest woodland conservation charity. They're based in England, Scotland, Wales, and in Northern Ireland. Our offices in Northern Ireland are actually in Clannyboy Estate. So we go for walks at lunch around. I just saw that map, was fascinated. And our vision in the Woodland Trust is a world where trees and woods thrive for people and for nature. In Northern Ireland, we look after 57 sites across the country. They're all free for everyone to enjoy. And Helen, if you want to talk to me, you're more than welcome to have a wee hoke round. So my presentation really is going to focus in on ancient woodland, the inventory in Northern Ireland, and how we've used that in terms of the work that we've done. So it's really, how do we use the inventory we have? What has that done over the past number of years? And then where do we hope maybe the next ancient woodland inventory for Ireland is going to take us? So what do? We create woodland. We have approximately, we create woodland in our own estate. And we also work with landowners to plant trees and to restore woodland on their estate as well. We advocate for decision makers, the value of trees, and we try to make government policy benefit people, trees, nature, and climate. So our activities can kind of be summed up as create, protect, restore, and we do that for the benefit of people, climate, and nature. So I've already said we have 57 sites. It's approximately 630 hectares of woodland. That encompasses ancient woodland, long-established woodland sites, newly planted sites, but they're all native woodland sites, and they're all managed for the benefit of people and for nature. Some of our major projects in Northern Ireland are Mourne Park, just outside Kilkeel in County Down. We acquired this ancient woodland site in 2021, and we've been carrying out restoration works. I'll touch on that shortly. We also have Glasnabradden Wood, which is a 98-hectare site in the Belfast Hills. There's Cave Hill, we're next door. So we purchased that site again in 2021, and we've been planting a native woodland site there. So 150,000 native species have been planted on this site. With volunteers and community groups. We haven't used contractors. We've done that entirely with the local community. And that's it's kind of a response to climate change, but also getting the locals involved in this woodland, which will be theirs and theirs to enjoy forever. And we only plant trees that are locally sourced and grown. We do not import trees from overseas. So we have a scheme called UK and Ireland Sourced and Grown. All of our trees only come from nurseries that we can certify are biosecure. And that means that all the trees in Northern Ireland only come from the island of Ireland. Our outreach team, so our outreach manager, Matt, is somewhere in the room. So any questions about that, I'm going to defer to him. But we have supported landowners. So last year, we supported the planting of over 300 hectares of new native woodland and 3.75 kilometres of hedging on land that is not on our own estate. That may be landowners or farmers or public bodies. And our key partners within that project, those kind of projects are NI Water, where we're working to plant a million trees on their estate over a 10-year period. And we have a project with National Museums Northern Ireland where we've been doing ancient woodland restoration at their site in Kiltraw. So engagement as well. Just last year, we had over 500,000 people visited our sites. Northern Ireland only has 2 million people, so that's quite a good engagement rate. Like I said, they're free to visit. We also have a volunteer development officer. So that is a person that we employ to get the public involved in the work that we do. That engages the public in our messaging and gives people a way to channel. There are frustrations about the state of climate and the state of nature, and it's a really positive way to engage people in restoring and planting new woodlands across the country. Our two flagship sites at Mourne Park and the Faughn Valley, we have dedicated staff there, and their role really is to engage with the local community and community groups and to help them get involved in those projects. At Mourne Park, we're obviously doing a lot of restoration and additional planting and buffering around ancient woodland. So our community development officer has engaged with a wide range of community groups just to try and get them involved. And we've been able to capture a lot of the human history and the local history of that site. And then our volunteer and outreach officer in the Faughn Valley has done a similar job where we've connected small pockets of ancient woodland along the new A6 road. Evidence. So we have some really big evidence sources. So we have last year launched what's called the UK Tree Equity Score. That was a project with our partners in the United States, American Forests, and we've mapped urban tree cover in every town and city across the UK. And we've been able to identify priority areas for local authorities to plant trees for the benefit of people. Our Woodland Establishment Mapping Project, we worked as part of a coalition in Northern Ireland with other ENGOs, so the National Trust, Ulster Wildlife and RSPB, to develop nature recovery network maps. And that takes various habitat maps and data sets and identifies how we can deliver bigger, better and more joined up habitats. We took that map one step further. So we have now developed an opportunity map for woodland creation in Northern Ireland. So what that does is it can tell you where you can't put woodland. So you can't plant obviously in deep peat and other habitats. But what it also looks is at soil data and land use classes and tells us where we may be able to plant trees and possibly what density that might be. We've taken that one step further again, and we've decided we've looked at prioritizing planting in certain areas. So riparian planting to improve water quality, if you've heard of Loch Ness, but also we've looked at prioritizing ancient woodland. So where can we plant trees to connect ancient woodland sites, but also to buffer them? So if we only had a limited amount of resources, where would we want to focus those activities? Nina is here, and she does have a poster with the original nature recovery maps, and we do have a report that I can share if you are interested in that. And then obviously the ancient woodland inventory, which I'll touch on. So we use all of this to do advocacy work. That's me and a colleague in Stormont. We have a Living Legends campaign, and that is to protect our oldest trees, not woodlands, trees. We are working on a bill with a member of the Assembly in Stormont, and that is looking at legal protections, stronger legal protections for our trees. And that will include limiting permitted developments for ancient woodland sites. And I'll touch that later on. We've been working with local councils to develop tree strategies, which includes things like ancient woodland restoration as well as planting trees. And we're trying to influence a Northern Ireland land use framework. What do we use land for? How do we involve local communities in that land use debate? And that will hopefully influence maybe whether we restore woodland, create woodland or other habitats. We also want a renewed package of funding for woodland planting, but also restoration. So in terms of ancient woodland, we're going to talk about protect, restore and create. And that's my son hugging Ireland's oldest oak in Beaver Oak. And we're going to start really with what gets measured, gets managed. It's a horrible term. It's a management speak. But if you look at it, what gets mapped, gets protected, can get restored and can get created. So back in 2007, the Back in the Map project was complete and the ancient woodland inventory in Northern Ireland was ready. So what this did was obviously identified and classified woods in Northern Ireland, and we had various classifications. I'm not going to go into the depth of detail that we've just heard, but ultimately we got some key stats. We now know where our ancient and our long-established woodland was. It was finally mapped, so we could then manage it, we could protect, we could restore, and we could create new woodland to buffer and protect that woodland. So it has a classification. I know John talked about possible ancient woodland. We have ancient woodland 1, 2, and 3. 1 is, it's definitely ancient woodland based on the evidence. I'm not going to go into great detail here. 2 is, it probably definitely is ancient woodland. 3 is, it's probably ancient woodland. And then we've got long established woodland. It's not ancient woodland, but the maps show that it's been there since the 1830s. And then we also have ancient woodland that's been lost since the 1960s. And what we do in Northern Ireland, we talk about we have 0.04% of our land mass is ancient woodland. That's based on ancient 1 and 2. We can, with a high degree of certainty, say these sites are ancient woodland. And that just sort of emphasizes the importance to decision makers of the importance of doing more to restore these habitats and protect it. What it doesn't do, it doesn't tell us the condition. It just tells us where it is. Um, so yes, we've only 400 or 549 hectares of woodland classified as 1 or 2, and 13% of ancient and long established woodland since the 1960s has been lost. So how does this impact the work that we do? So in the Woodland Trust, we get contacted by members of the public, generally maybe at least once a month, but maybe a few weeks. It comes in flurries, but with people who are concerned about housing developments or developments that have taken place that will result in the loss of any woodland. And what we do, the first thing we would do is we'll check the ancient woodland inventory. Is it ancient woodland? Is it long established woodland? We'll look to see if these trees have a protection. Are they TPO'd? And we'll also kind of look at other data sets to see what we have to go with. So under Restore, we have a number of reports. I don't have paper copies of these with me, unfortunately, but they are available on our website. This is the state of the UK's woods and trees. It was published in 2021. There is an updated version will be published next year, and we'll periodically do these every number of years. This does a look at the condition of woodland. It was mentioned earlier on, obviously, ancient and long-established woodland is not a designation. So we don't have data on the condition of our ancient and long-established woodland. What we do have is data on the condition of our designated woodland. And only 1% of woodland ASSI in Northern Ireland is in favourable condition. So it's not good. And 61 is in unfavourable condition. And the primary reason, again, this was mentioned earlier, it's nothing new, was invasive species. So what we are doing in the Trust is we're working to try and address that through ancient woodland restoration in a number of our sites. So Moran Park, for example, we purchased that in 2021. And my former colleague, Michael, worked on that site with the previous landowners to remove invasive species. So we've been working on that site for a number of years to remove rhododendron, to remove laurel, and it's amazing to see the regeneration that happens literally within a year. You have wall-to-wall invasives. The next year you have a blanket of bluebells. In fact, the picture where I had the vision of the Woodland Trust at the start, that was invasives at one point. So this is Moran Park. It's situated in Kilkeel in County Down. Like I said, we purchased it in 2021 from private ownership, and that was through a mix of public funding and private fundraising. It's a 156 hectare site, and it has 73 hectares of ancient semi-natural woodland. It is one of the largest blocks of ancient semi-natural woodland in Northern Ireland, so it is significant, and that kind of was why the Trust were really keen to take it into its ownership and to open it up to the public to enjoy and to continue the conservation efforts to restore that habitat back to its former glory. We have opened up trails and we have acquired another 32 hectares of land adjacent to Moran Park, where we hope to connect and buffer that. In terms of CREATE, I talked about the woodland opportunity mapping that we carried out. This map here, the purple bits on that, those are areas that would be suitable for woodland creation that would connect or buffer existing ancient or long-established woodland sites. So we can potentially target our outreach efforts or our woodland creation efforts to ensure that we can deliver bigger and better, more joined up woodland habitats across the landscape. And that information also gives us the area of land suitable within each council area for woodland creation. So we've been able to kind of merge lots of different data sets, and the ancient woodland inventory has been key to that. An example of how we've done that is in the Faughton Valley. If you drive on the A6 road up to Derry, there's the Faughton Valley Woodlands, and they're a pocket of lots of small ancient woodland sites. They're quite small, but there is a high concentration of them, and they were all quite fragmented. So when they were building this new road, we closed our woodlands for a 3-year period, and we've done work to connect those through new path networks, through bridges, and by planting to connect all of these habitats up. And a lot of our acquisitions as the Woodland Trust will focus in on this area we're calling our treescape. We want to expand that treescape beyond just these sites. So looking forward to the future, I've got this image. It's basically to support our campaign for Living Legends, and it starts with the time frame of going down history and all the events that would have happened with throughout the tree's life, and it ends with a road widening project, which is generally what happens with a lot of our ancient woodland sites. So what we would love to see, and we're really excited about the new ancient woodland inventory, is just to update that information. Like I said, in 2007, the last inventory was complete. When we are going up against planners or developers, the older your data set is, the more it can be called into question about whether it's still up to date or whether it's accurate. We would love to uncover sites that were maybe missed in the previous inventory. And we would also love to see how much ancient woodland has been protected or lost since then. Hopefully not a lot, but it'd be a good measure of success over that period of time. We would love funding for ancient woodland restoration in Northern Ireland. We're calling for a funding pot of £21 million to restore 3,000 hectares of ancient woodland. To give you a bit of context, we've just spent about €500 million on a train station, so it's not a lot of money to protect something that can't be restored. So we want to see that from our government funding, and it would help us give a bit of certainty as to for contractors to restore our sites, but also we can focus efforts rather than fundraising from private sources to restore ancient woodland, that we can focus our efforts on planning more woodland creation and connectivity. And finally, we have other things like the tree protection bill I've talked about, and an ammonia strategy. So ammonia is another threat in Northern Ireland to ancient woodland. The ammonia strategy talks about reducing ammonia concentration around designated sites, but it is particularly harmful, obviously, to ancient woodland. So we're calling for that to be extended to include designated sites and ancient and long-established woodland. I'll let you know next year how that goes, but these are some of the things that we would love to see in the future, and these are only possible with an ancient woodland inventory, and the future ancient woodland inventory can only make this even better. Thank you very much.